Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Dialogue Podcast. This week, Greg and I took a little time to talk about something kind of serious. We're both in our 40s now, the halftime of life, and so what adjustments are we making at halftime? Hopefully this sparks some great conversation for you too.
Greg Ford.
I was trying to think of something else to say.
Shaylyn Ford. Here we are at the Dialogue.
Here we are once again.
Let's talk. Let's chat.
Maybe that's what I should lead it in with every week. Here we are once again on the Dialogue Podcast with Greg Ford.
That's.
You like that one? Is that better?
Yeah, I like it.
It's got a little like boomingness to it.
It feels official.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe that's the direction we're going to go. Welcome to the podcast. Not just you, but everyone who's joining us. Glad to have you with us. The Olympics have wrapped up, which honestly just now I don't know what to do with myself because
was it 3 weeks?
I think like 2.5, something like that. Yeah, 3.
It kind of feels like it went fast.
It does. It feels like it went too fast.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of memorable moments, like breaking. It's not break dancing, by the way. It's not. They don't call it that.
Oh.
It's breaking.
Okay.
I didn't know that till this week.
Yeah.
It's like offensive.
I think that was I don't think that was a highlight.
It depends on who you ask. Highlight in what way? For the meme part of the world?
The meme world.
The meme world.
Meme enthusiasts got what they came for.
They got more than they bargained for out of it. They were definitely happy with how it went. But I think for people who, I do actually feel bad for people who are like in the, break culture, breaking, whatever, like that is something you worked really hard on. These people are really athletic. They got really good. They've devoted a lot of time and energy to it. And then to have it kind of like be made a mockery of in some ways, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know did she intend it to be that?
No, I don't think so. I think she's pretty serious about what she's doing, but
but it just, I felt bad that it landed so flat.
Yeah.
Right. It just was not a hit.
I mean, with all due respect to those in the breaking community, and I mean that with sincerity because that is tremendous talent to be able to do all that stuff.
Can't do it.
Like it's amazing.
Throw out a hip.
It just doesn't feel like it belongs in the Olympics. It feels like one of those things that you got a creative group of people that are like, well, you got to engage the young people.
Yeah.
And so what are we going to do? And they're like, oh, kids like breakdancing. Cool, let's do breakdance. Like it just felt like a reach, and you got to take risks, right? You got to try things, and who knows, maybe it would have caught on and something
there are
else,
some other
right?
things that are like athletic but more creatively minded, like the what's the one where they have like a ball? Do you know what I'm talking about? They're like dancing with a ball and rolling it all over.
Basketball?
Okay, smarty. No, it's actually dancing.
Oh.
But they have to have the ball like in contact with their body at all times, and they're like rolling.
Is that an Olympic sport?
It is.
Oh, didn't see that.
I don't remember what it's called. I can't imagine it's called ball dancing. I think I'm probably wrong. We're gonna need Scott, our
are you sure this wasn't
researcher.
Are you sure this wasn't like a fever dream that you were having?
No,
that's a real thing.
It is a real thing.
I haven't seen anything on that.
We will pull up footage.
Okay.
Can you try to look this up for me and show Greg what we're talking about, because it's a real thing.
Oh, so it wasn't this
year.
There
you go.
It was in the London Olympics.
Oh, so they're not doing it anymore?
So it was 12 years ago.
Well, anyways, it is incredible.
Okay.
But I think that's like another one of those things where it's unbelievable what people can do, like their athleticism, their agility, their control, is pretty incredible. But does that make it an Olympic sport? I get it.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, again, sometimes it's just got to
How do you define it?
Yeah,
right.
And you got to take chances, and I don't mind that. But I'm glad. Word on the street is they've already announced
the kibosh
it's
on
done.
It's not coming back next
which is
time.
fine.
Yeah. One and done. We got to experience it.
That's right.
The women's basketball team winning by 1 point right at the very end, and it was the very last event that happened.
Who did they
play? Olympics too. France.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, they're like they haven't lost in 60 some games or something.
The women or the men?
The women.
Wow, that's crazy.
No, the men lost in Athens.
That's right.
They got the bronze, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then but the women haven't lost
just
for a
total
very,
dominance.
very, very, very long time.
Yeah, that is crazy. It was pretty cool to watch. I both games were very cool to watch. We actually had the men's game on. I was like upstairs in the kitchen cooking. We had some family in from out of state, and you guys were all like, the guys were downstairs, some of the women were upstairs, and I just hear like screaming from downstairs. So I had it on the TV upstairs, but I wasn't really watching at the time. So I was like, oh my gosh. So that was kind of cool to see. But
Yeah.
what is your favorite? Do you have a favorite moment from the Olympics this year?
Well,
because we're not going to get to talk about this for another 4
yeah.
years.
So this is, I grew up playing football, baseball, and basketball. So those are kind of my favorites. The basketball, I thought the game against Serbia, the men's basketball against Serbia, where I was watching that. Actually, you'd fallen asleep. I was watching the playback, and I hadn't checked the internet, so I didn't know. I really didn't know what was going to happen. And you got Nikola Jokic on the other team. He's an MVP multiple times. That was probably the best basketball game I've ever seen. I mean,
really?
Yeah, like it was. So we were losing by, I want to say 15 or something, maybe 13 in the third quarter. I might be getting that wrong, but we were getting handled.
Teens.
Yeah, we were getting handled, and it just looked like it was their night. They were hit. Serbia was hitting like every shot, and so you have like NBA All-Star games, which aren't as cool as they sound because people aren't really playing that hard. They're out there letting each other dunk,
right?
Letting each other shoot. Very little defense.
It's more of a show.
It's a show. This was the best players of our generation playing as hard as they can with a gold medal on the line, which only gets handed out every 4 years.
Yeah.
And they all, Durant, LeBron,
a lot of
Steph,
them are towards the end of their career. They won't be here next
There
time.
is no redeeming, right? So you have guys that normally maybe play defense are playing like their lives are on the line. And then, Curry gets hot, Durant gets hot. LeBron's out there playing unselfish, dude, playing incredible defense. And then, but then the France game, the gold medal game, last 3 minutes, it's tight, and Steph Curry gets unbelievably hot at the perfect time.
Fire,
and he can't miss. Like and it was pretty dramatic. It was pretty cool. Like that was probably my personal favorite of the Olympics. But yeah,
there
How
were
about
a
you?
lot of cool track and field moments too.
Yeah.
Like obviously gymnastics is always a top favorite for me, but I loved track and field this time around. So many cool stories. Excuse me, so many moments. And now I'm actually very excited to watch the Paralympics that start, I think, next week. Because like you've already got some storyline leading in, the guy that this is terrible that I can't remember people's names. The guy that is a Paralympian runner, both of his legs are gone, and his wife won some of the track events.
I think she was long jump. Mm-hmm. I can't remember her exact name, but I know she has two last names.
Yeah. But yeah, the women's 4x4 team, the men's 4x4 team was great too, but the women's 4x4 team, and just like,
oh my gosh,
just eons of difference.
They've outlapped everybody
between first and second
crazy.
Was insane. Yeah. Like you're watching some of the truly generational runners. Like it was pretty cool. I'm trying to remember how far off were they from the Olympic record or world record,
maybe
right?
Tenth,
it was like a tenth of a second, and it was probably only because Gabby Thomas had like a little stumble when she was handed the baton. So I mean, just an incredible team, really fun to watch. So yeah, now I'm just really sad because we have nothing until the Winter Olympics in 2 years.
You gotta wait 4 years before we have something to do again.
I know, exactly. I like the Winter Olympics, but I'll be honest, I like Summer Olympics more.
Oh, for sure.
Winter Olympics are nice because winter kind of stinks and you need something to enjoy and like look forward to.
Yeah, but you just watch people be cold.
You just watch lots of things that have to do with snow, and you're like,
it's not the same. It's not the same.
Yeah. Anyways, by the way, you just mentioned football. I heard flag football is on the docket next time around in 2028.
I better start warming that left arm up.
You're gonna have to outcompete some of the NFL players for the spot on the team. I believe in you, though. If there was anybody that ever believed in another person's
I mean,
capability
I'll
to
be
do hard
48.
things.
I'll probably be nearing the end of my prime.
Nah, just getting started.
Okay.
Just getting warmed
I
up.
like you.
You're headed into your best decade.
Thank you.
That's where you will be.
Appreciate you.
You're welcome. I believe in you. I always have. I've seen you do incredible things that I shouldn't say that nobody thought you could do, but that like things that seemed really difficult and that you just pulled it off over and over. So cheers to you, sir.
That's a nice thing to say. That's actually, football's a little segue into a conversation.
Okay.
That I was thinking about.
All right.
Normally, you bring the conversation. I'm always down for some
take the lead.
ladies
I'm here
first.
for it.
Okay. So I was thinking about halftime, right? So you think about, obviously, not just football, basketball, other sports have halftime. But halftime, you make halftime adjustments, right? So you go in, first half played out a certain kind of way. We have to decide based on what we learned, how we're doing, what are we going to do differently in the second half, right? So I'm thinking about that with life, right? So you turned 40 this year. I turned 44 this year.
Sure, let's just tell people. I'm just kidding. I happily tell everybody.
I'm sorry. We can edit that out. Scott, can you please?
That's honestly, I shouldn't have even said that because I don't care. I'm actually kind of excited about 40.
Okay.
I think the only reason I said that was just because like that's the running joke. Like you don't tell a lady's age. But you know what? Forget that. Who cares? I'm 40 and I'm proud of it.
Own it. You wear it well.
Appreciate you.
So it's halftime, right? So we'll call it, they would say, I think the average life expectancy in the U.S., I want to say, is like 78 or 79.
Is it really?
So the whole idea of
low.
over the hill is, 40 is kind of right there, right? Scott, do you have the life expectancy?
Feel free to. You on
huh? In the U.S.?
Really?
I think it's gone up. I thought I remembered.
Ew.
Is that? How about in the world? Ours is probably lower
across the world.
I don't know.
If we're talking
71. Okay.
Because you think about some places, like obviously their life expectancy is probably a fair amount longer, but then you've got a lot of places in the world that are really struggling that life expectancy is a lot shorter.
Yeah. All right. So we'll say 40 is, around halftime.
The median,
right?
yeah.
We'll call it halftime. So I'm curious, like halftime adjustments. I'm curious, like first half of your life, here you are kind of evaluating the next half of your life. How do you think differently than you did when you started? How do you see the world differently than you did when you started? What adjustments are you making now, or maybe adjustments that you've either decided to make or that you're thinking through? You're going, I'm kind of rethinking this or whatever it might be, and curious.
Oh man, that is a very loaded one. It's one that I'm actively thinking through right now and considering a lot of the changes that I would like to make or things I would like to do. I think a few of the big ones off the top of my head is I can look back and say I've been frustrated at times by how much I have allowed myself to be limited, worrying about what other people may think of something. And I don't want to be too negative because there are plenty of things I've done that I know other people look at and judge and, whatever. They make certain assumptions about me as a person. And so that's okay. Like, it's not that I've completely built my life around what other people think, but I do think that it probably a more accurate thing to say would be I have allowed it to steal some joy from me at times.
So you're more aware of it. You're thinking about it. Even if it doesn't control your behavior or decision, it's something you're aware of. And so it, in some way it's siphoning off some energy.
It is. And I think there are times where it has put me in a headspace where I can't fully lean into a moment and really enjoy it for what it is. Because I do kind of have that rankling around in the back of my brain. And I don't want that to be the case, It is a delicate balance, and I want to put this caveat out there for people because I recognize that you do have to be responsible in the way that you portray yourself to the world. And you do have to be responsible, especially if you're a person of faith, in the way that you represent yourself and the way you represent your faith. And so I'm not saying like I'm just going to go out and
like I don't care about people or what they think or their opinions, or
I don't want to lead
irresponsible and just throw out whatever. And
that's right. But at the same time, I think sometimes we get really sucked into some like weird stuff that is really has nothing to do with actually, being a good example or being a leader or, representing your faith well. I think sometimes we really do just get sideways and like pile on lots of extra things that don't belong there. And make ourselves responsible and beholden to people that don't know us, don't know our hearts, don't know our motivation, don't understand our lives. And somehow we like build what we decide to do around that, which is kind of goofy, I think. So I really want to make sure that I'm not doing that I'm not allowing.
Do you have like
that.
a specific example or like something that you can think of, or is it something like you're walking through the store and someone's rude to Hudson or something because he's doing his autism thing and somebody says something inappropriate and you're like, well, I'm a pastor's wife and they might know who I am, and so I got to be super nice versus saying, hey dude, mind your own business, get out of my face.
You know what,
which maybe you should or shouldn't say, but my point is, is it that type of thing?
Yeah, you know what, that one actually has never really been too much of a problem for me, because I think if you're enough of a jerk that you're gonna say something nasty to a kid with special needs who like clearly has special needs, then I kind of don't care where you go to church. You should probably have someone tell you, that you should behave yourself better.
You let them have it?
No, I think there's a big difference between letting someone have it and addressing the issue. And I have. Like, I've never just gone off on somebody and let them have it, cussed a blue streak or yelled at someone or whatever. But I have said to people, hey, I'm not sure if you're aware, but he has autism. Here are some things about, like, I'm going to sit there and educate you in this moment, because you're not going to turn around and do this to somebody else's kid who may be in a more vulnerable position emotionally than I am as a parent. So I'm definitely not going to just like smile and move on if you're actively a jerk. If you just didn't know something and you misunderstood, you know what I mean? If it was like an innocent, innocuous interaction, then I'm totally just going to blow it off and not make a deal out of it. But if you approach me, which unfortunately I have had a few people approach me, call me names, curse at me, curse at my kid, whatever, have some really like crummy interactions, we're going to go ahead and put a bow on this interaction that hopefully leads you to a more positive place. Like, because you really should be ashamed of this behavior. And not in me, when I say ashamed, like, this is not me, again, yelling at someone and shaming them, but I am going to have like an educational moment with you so that hopefully you walk away and go, oh shoot, I totally mishandled that and I don't want to do that again.
So when you were talking about in the second half of your life, not being as beholden to or affected by what you perceive to be opinions other people might be making about you or your decisions or your behavior or who you are, like, I'm going to be more comfortable in my skin there. Now, I'm not necessarily going to make drastically different decisions. It's more of something going on in between the ears. Is that what you're saying?
It is. And I can give you some instances around that. And who knows, maybe hopefully this sets some other people free that are stuck in some of these types of things. Everybody's version of it is different. But I know for me, like, I have been concerned about how I've been perceived at different points in my life. Maybe because of the way that I look, or because of some of the activities that are appealing to me, things that I like to do. I know we've talked before about, like,
being pageants.
I do hair and makeup, and I have competed in pageants, and I support other people when they do that. And that's, a lot of people are like, oh, it's so vain and shallow. And I think a lot of people assume that I'm
straight out of central casting.
Exactly. Yep. I can understand. And I don't judge people for having that like split second view of me. I can understand how it looks like, oh, well, this is probably all she cares about. Like, she's vapid. She just wants to walk around and be a fashion plate, whatever. That's really not me at all. Like,
it's also not wrong to enjoy doing your hair and makeup.
That's exactly
or
right.
being stylish or whatever.
I enjoy it for myself. I think it's fun. It's creative. It's an outlet, to try new things and to explore your sense of style. And I love doing it for other people. Like, I love doing hair and makeup in the way that helps other women, I think, sometimes see the beauty in themselves that they've missed. I don't think you need it to be beautiful, but I think sometimes women like don't see themselves accurately, and you can help transform the way that they view themselves.
I remember when, you first went to cosmetology school and then you were starting your career. And I remember one time I was asking you about it, like, hey, what do you love about this? Like, what is this about? What is it about like hair and makeup that, lights you up? And you were talking about how, like, kind of what you started to say there, that sometimes women don't see themselves as beautiful. And you're like, I like to look at their face and see like the different elements of their face that I can draw out and I can accentuate.
That's right.
Because often our eyes go, especially when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we go right to the thing we don't like, right? What's your worst feature?
What do I not like? Yes.
And you're like, what I can do is take the emphasis in their mind and, off of that.
Yep.
And to bring the features that God gave them and accentuate them and bring them to the surface and give them a different. And I was like, dang, that's deep.
And
it's not about covering
special.
yourself up. It's about drawing out, again, the thing that's in you. And I remember you saying, I'm not trying to make them look like somebody else. I'm trying to make them look like themselves. So sometimes people will even bring a picture and go, can you make me look like,
I say no every time.
Like, no, I'm going to make you look like you.
That's right.
And the, the best version of you or whatever. And I remember I had never ever thought of it like that. And I could see how people would assume, hey, this is just straight vanity or whatever. But I remember you talking about that, 20 years ago.
Yeah. And that is 100% the heart of it for me. And some of my most precious moments in my job have been times that I have shaved someone's head before chemo. And you've had a really deep, intimate moment with them. But then I've actually gotten certified in fitting wigs specifically to people's heads. And I do that for people who are going through chemo. And I don't charge for that because I'm helping you reclaim a piece of you, right?
Helping someone through a hard time.
Through a hard time. Again, one that will make me emotional, but times that I've done work with Make-A-Wish Foundation and, gotten girls ready for, gotten someone ready for prom. Did not expect to cry on the podcast today. Sorry, guys. Whew. That is a precious memory for her, but also for her family, because they're not going to experience a wedding day together someday. They're not going to experience graduation, but this can be special. So the work that you get to do in a space like that, this is my point. The work that you get to do in a space like that has so much less to do with the quote unquote vanity side of things and so much more about the meaning underneath your work. And I think one of the sad things that we tend to do to each other is demean each other's work, or sometimes even do this to ourselves. We demean our work and the value that it has in this world. I'm only this, I'm only that, and it's like, what? No, what you do has deep, deep meaning, beyond the surface, beyond what people might see on the front. So I guess, went deep there.
Just so from halftime adjustment standpoint, right? For the first, would you say in the first half of your life, you would have either felt a need to defend yourself or what you've chosen to go, hey, this isn't as shallow as you think it is, or to maybe walk in and when people know who you are and what you do, to kind of start from that place of going, this is what they think of me and I have to work myself out of it, or I just have to operate knowing and assuming that that's what they think of me. And you're going, in the second half, I'm not going to do that. Second half, I'm just going to be proud of who I am. And if they do, they do. If they They don't. Like, is that,
Yeah, like
how do you do that differently?
Yeah, coming to a place, I think, where I've realized it's not my job to change your mind. You are going to think of me what you're going to think of me. I can do my best to present myself accurately, and then you make your decision from there. But I think I have tended to shrink down, try to minimize certain parts of my life, or just not talk about them or hide them or whatever. Or not go out and do certain things that I would really love to do and put myself in positions because I felt like, oh, people are really going to think XYZ of me. And especially I think I'm extra mindful of it in relation to you because I'm like, oh, how does this reflect on people's view of Greg as well? Right? Because it's like, oh, well, there's this pastor and his wife is this, vapid, whatever. And so then what does that make them think of you, that this is who you chose as a life partner? So it is kind of a weird mixed bag, because it's like, the reality is I am just as happy like out back with my hands covered in, grease trying to like fix a heating unit, than I am out in a, fancy gown or something. But both parts of me are true. And I do like both, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So yeah, just trying to get to a place where I worry less about that, and just really lean into like, this is how God made me. This is the person that I am. These are the areas that he gifted me, and the things that he put in me that I enjoy. And so why would I be ashamed of it, I guess?
I think in that first we'll call it 40 years, and not that that's the right number, but the first part of your life, there is a lot of discovery that's happening. You were talking about being comfortable in who you are, comfortable in your own skin, but you're kind of discovering who that person is, right? So you've been having little clues throughout your life. When you were younger, you like doing things that, maybe physical things. You like being in nature, or you like to read, or you like to learn, or you like to do a pageant, or you like to, compete, or whatever it is, right? And so you have these things. And so, but not any one of those things is all encompassing in terms of who you are. And so in a lot of your first years, right, 20 years or so, is kind of given to you, like, hey, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. Not necessarily a lot of kids get a lot of choice, right? So you're kind of told, like, like for you, for example, you were doing like, you were a majorette, you were, or fine arts, or you were singing in a quartet, and there wasn't a lot of choice. I mean, it's not like they put a gun to your head, but it was like, this is what our family does. And if the family doesn't do something that you personally, like if it's not a big nature family, or they're not into this, that, or the other thing, you kind of do what your family does. And then those things might actually be really things that could be passions for you, but they're not really, haven't been explored. So I think it's like, you got those first 20 years of foundation. The next 20 years are like exploration. You're out there trying to figure out, who am I, man? Do I just like music because my family was musical? Or do I really love music? Yeah. Or, no, actually, it might have taken me 10 years to realize, actually, I think I like nature more than I like music, or whatever it is. Right. And so I think it's in that next 20 years that you're figuring out who you are. And then I think that second half is, like you're saying, like embracing who you are. Yeah. Liking her, knowing who you are, confident in who you are. And because when you were talking about like feeling like you need to prove things to people, and not even like you need their validation, but it's like you don't want their judgment, or it's like, it doesn't feel good to be not understood, by the people around you, and especially, the reductive stereotype that they're putting you in. But I think at the same time, that same instinct to not want to be misunderstood by other people, you're simultaneously still learning to understand yourself. And I think if you fight hard enough and you're perceptive enough, probably in the middle of life, you start to go, no, I thought I was good at that. I'm not. I thought I loved doing that. Turns out I don't. You become more self-aware than ever. And so now to love yourself, so to speak, you're able to do that more than ever because you know what and who you're loving in loving yourself.
Right.
So I think that was insightful. I never quite thought of it in that way. That, of course, we want people to love themselves from day one, but it's kind of hard at certain points when you're like, I'm not sure who I am.
Right.
I'm not sure how much of this is nature, how much of this is nurture, how much of this I'm doing because I don't want to disappoint people. How much am I doing because I'm really passionate about this? How much am I doing this because I believe it? How much am I doing it because my family believes it?
Right.
You know, how much of this am I doing from a place of security and safety and from a place of purpose or a place of fear that if I don't, what will happen to me? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, if you keep fighting that fight, asking, seeking, and knocking, you get to the where you're at, where I'm at now in life, and you go, I'm starting to get pretty clear on who I am. And I think I do know, and I'm going to choose to love that person that God made. And I hope other people do too, because we all like to be loved, but you also don't have this need, okay, to be known by everyone or to be loved by everyone. Right. You know,
like I'm cool being misunderstood at this point.
Yeah. I think that's why marriages, by the way, can either get really good or really bad at this phase. Because I think once, you know, most of the time when you marry someone, if you get married in your 20s, you're still trying to figure out who you are yourself.
You're kind of growing up together in a way.
In many ways, you're figuring out who you are yourself. So it's not even like I could fully tell you who I was. I could tell you who I thought I was when we met in our early 20s. But a lot of this has been either me changing and you changing, or both of us actually discovering what's been there the whole time. We just couldn't quite see it clearly.
Yep.
And you could see that once that real self starts to become defined and embraced first by yourself, you can see how couples sometimes get to a place where they're like, okay, so now this is our reality. Now we have to decide, do we want to embrace each other?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you really do come to a place kind of at the midway point where you go, we have to choose each other again, because you really are a new person. Like if you are both the type of people who have chosen to grow and change, some people choose to stay stuck. But if you are growing, changing, self-discovering people, then there's going to come a point where you're kind of discovering each other all over again and go, am I choosing you again? Am I choosing this new you? And are you choosing this new me? I feel really thankful because I feel like you and I have had a cool journey of doing that together, where we've made a lot of those discoveries together and shared kind of what we're experiencing along the way. So we've had a chance to get to know the new us, I guess, as we go. I think that's been really cool. But I do think that if you don't share that journey to the best of your ability, it is easy to grow apart at that juncture in your life, for sure. I think, sorry, I have so many thoughts swirling from what you said. And I wish I could just go play it back real quick.
No, any other halftime adjustments that you're thinking like of things that, or do you want me to kind of summarize what I just said a second ago and maybe it'll spark the thought again?
No, that's all right. I'm just trying to sort them all out because I had like 3 thoughts, but I didn't want to interrupt you. And now they're all kind of jumbled, which is, I just can't manage my own internal brain list well enough, I guess. Another halftime adjustment, I think, is learning to kind of listen to my gut again as well, which is probably kind of adjacent to what I just said. But I think that I spent a long time not trusting myself. I think there are probably some unhealthy messages that we accidentally send sometimes, where it's like, oh, you really can't trust your own thoughts on things, or, your heart will lead you astray or whatever. And of course, like, you can't just operate your entire life on feelings. I think that's a pretty goofy message. But at the same time, you do have some intuition and some gut on things sometimes, and you should pay attention to it and not just act exclusively on that, but put it up against facts, put some pieces of the puzzle together. And I think you'll come up with a more complete picture. we should be thinking with our head, heart, and gut, right? I can't remember if we've mentioned this before, but you had talked about this at another time where like you actually have neurons in your head, not just in your brain, but in your heart and in your gut as well. You have smarts and other pieces of you. That's why when something major happens in your life, sometimes you will feel it in your chest, you will feel it in your gut, because you have intelligence there in a different way. And so I think I have really just denied my own gut sometimes. And it's like, no, man, I have some intuition that's on point here sometimes, and I need to pay attention to it. Mm-hmm. So that's another one.
Yeah, that's good. I think the message, especially like in church or among Christians, right, is not wanting people to live on their impulses.
Right.
So it's like, well, what's right today is right today. What's right tomorrow is right tomorrow. And so you're not anchored to anything. So you're just kind of tossed all over the place. And I think what it ends up spilling into is beyond impulses into instincts,
right,
and intuition, right? So you think there are some instincts that you have. There are some things, the spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives inside of me. And, that gut often will guide you.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean I'm just letting my feelings take the lead. Because there are times to be steadfast and we don't feel like it. But I think your instincts and your intuition sometimes will tell you that, especially the more you mature over time. And so, we do end up often, I think, coaching people or telling people, and I think meaning well, wanting people to be anchored to something. But we tell them, don't listen to your feelings. But then on the other hand, like we would tell our daughter, hey man, if you're going somewhere and it's not feeling right, okay, you need to listen to that.
Right.
And you need to call for help, and you need to, walk away, or you need to whatever. Something feels not quite right. And I know that starts to get a little dicey in there because it's hard. It's not tangible or concrete, and it's hard to know exactly what to do with that. But when you spend your whole life having people tell you don't listen to your feelings, okay, and they mean just don't be impulsive,
right?
It can kind of send the message like whatever you feel, you should just push it down and act like it's not there. And especially the more you live and you go, actually, I did what you said, but and didn't listen to myself, and it turns out you were wrong. Mm-hmm. And I should have listened to myself. And so I think part of wisdom and maturity over time is starting to kind of fine tune and know the difference between this feeling that is ultimately anchored in impulses or even selfishness or immaturity or flesh or whatever. And you start to kind of, be able to tune into those other voices.
Yeah, 100%.
Based on, often willingness to analyze your own trial and error. You're like, wow, that time I thought this and it was that. And you start to notice patterns and, you kind of start to zero in and be able to do that better. So I think that's good.
I think a final one for me that is good, like a good halftime check-in, actually ties into what we talked about last week a little bit with health. Like I think I've always generally been a healthy and active person, but not really dialing in on my physical care the way that I need to, I think sometimes. I have had periods where I have been really good and dialed in on that kind of thing. And then other periods of time where it's like, because of just kind of how I'm wired, I tend to live up in my head more than I do in my body. And so I've not really thought of my body as part of me to the degree that I should. It's just kind of like, it's a thing, it's a meat sack. Well, but it's not. And I think, excuse me, I think a really good call out, that you and I actually talked about after the podcast last week, I was like, I felt pretty convicted. And it wasn't in any way something that you were trying to do. It wasn't like this secret message that you were aiming at me. But it was like, it was for me, and I'm thankful for it. I have not tended to think long game about my physical health as much, I think. And I haven't thought about it in the sense that you talked about it being an investment, where you're like, you made this much of an investment in your mind. Why would you not protect the investment with the way that you care for your body, right? To ensure that longevity. Thought that was really helpful and really good. And then the other piece that was a great conversation that you and I had afterwards, and there were a couple different things that played into it. Like, I care deeply about nature and like the health of nature and things like that. Why have I not thought of my own body as part of nature? Your own body is a full ecosystem in and of itself. You have your microbiome, you have so many different cells and things that are all interplaying within your body. And yet I haven't even considered taking care of the health of this when it's very much still a part of nature as a whole. And that was a good revelation for me too. I'm like, I need to really like come up with a game plan for how I am going to support that same system, just like you would want to support the health of the overall earth ecosystem. Like, this is an ecosystem unto itself. So that's a good one for me, that I think, coming up with something not that is a, hey, this is what you're doing this month to try to real quick get into shape, whatever. It's like, no, it's not about that. It's about how am I actually going to support the overall health of all of my systems long term, and what is sustainable for a long time.
It's amazing when you dig deep into a thought how by doing that, sometimes things that are fairly simple and logical are sitting right in front of your face, all of a
really
sudden become visible.
Yeah.
Like
it's
like
point.
I remember we were having this conversation about, certainly somebody could take a theology around the earth and the ecosystem and nature and could really take it wild to where you're bowing down and worshiping trees or something like that. But also sometimes Christians are notorious for being so focused on leaving the earth, and kind of going, you know what, one day it'll burn up, who cares, it's all about
so
some
kind of treating it like something disposable.
That we don't think about the fact that at the very beginning of the Bible it says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And since the moment he created the earth and we've learned about it, we're learning about the incredible, it talks about in Romans, the amazing character of God and the intricacies.
That's right.
All the intricacies of the micro and the macro and all the things happening in the ocean that's undiscovered. And again, the more we discover, we're like, holy smokes, like this is the most sophisticated,
interconnected,
unbelievable
thing.
And if we believe God made it, why would we believe God didn't care about it?
That's right.
Why would we say that his image is in it? So again, that's not saying, hey, let's take it into some crazy extreme, but it's like to then just not care about the atmosphere, the world,
to not be mindful of your responsibility and your place in it.
And so we were having that conversation, you and I, and it was through that you started to go, man, if I care about the sustainability of the marine biology and what's happening with sharks and what that does for the entire food chain and what that does for the entire ecosystem of the ocean. And if I care about that, why do I not care about the ecosystem of my body that houses my brain and my heart and my soul? So it's like,
and take it one step further too. If I think that the things that I think about in my brain that I care about, that we just named, if there are things in this world that I care about and that I think it is my responsibility to be part of solving, and it's whatever it is for you, if it's being there for your kids, if it's the work that you do that you find valuable, whatever it is, if you think that the things that matter to you actually are your valuable piece to do in the world, then you not taking your care of your physical body, you are actually like abdicating your ability to make the maximum impact. Does that make sense? It's like, if you're a writer and your writing is going to outlive you and you think your writing is valuable and that you're telling stories that matter or whatever, if you cut that short, you're not going to be able to write after you're dead. There are things that will go unwritten. Does any of that I don't know if I'm making sense.
I mean, that's the spirit of what we talked about even last week, right? Of like protecting the investment. And doing the best you can to have a longer life and a higher quality of life.
And not even just in a way that is about like, oh, I just want to live as long as I can. Because some people genuinely don't care as much about that. But it really is about, okay, if I think there's something that is mine to do in this world, I have to make sure I'm around in time, like enough time to do it. I have to make sure I'm still capable.
Yeah, that's good.
What about you? What are some halftime reports?
We the other day, you and I were just talking about our last 20 years, and Ella came out. She's like, can I come hang out? We were like in the middle of a pretty deep conversation. And it was around bedtime, we were rocking in our Adirondack rockers on our on our back porch, and she came out, and I think you had to go in for something a few minutes later, and she's like, what are you guys doing? And I was like, we're taking some time to kind of just think about our lives, and we're meandering a little bit in like how we used to think versus how we do now. So we were kind of in some ways starting what this conversation we're having now. And I kind of use it as a teaching point for her to go, this is something in life you got to be careful, because life is busy. Life is
so fast.
It moves fast. And so often you can get so focused on what is here and now and what I need to do and what I need to complete. And you're just running that hamster wheel and turning the crank and whatever. And you never stop to pull back and really look at your life. And I think, making habits and disciplines in your schedule, your life to pull away and to have what feels sometimes like a pretty inefficient conversation. It feels like you might be rambling or whatever, but you're circling the problem, you're circling the definition, you're doing that type of thing. And so I'm kind of there right now. I'm in a lot of ways, I go, I'm 44. We planted the church 13 years ago. I feel like I've got, I don't know how long, but, call it 20 years of career left. I got about 20 behind me. And, really trying to go, what do I need to rethink and what do I want to do? So I don't know that I'm super conclusive. Like, I think you gave us 3 really good things that gives me a lot to think about. I think for me, I don't know that I have like a 3 that I've crystallized, as much as it's really more about, I'm in the process of really looking and going, this is external processing here, but it feels like my first 20 years I was at war. And my next 20 years, I want to try to find a little more peace and freedom.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to wage war, and that's okay. And I think, I was trying to figure things out and trying to establish some things. And it was in some ways felt like success required me to live on the edge of my pain threshold. And it's almost like if you're driving a car as fast as it can go and like everything's kind of shaking, and you're kind of like, okay, I hope this thing didn't, blow a gasket or whatever. A lot of my first 40 years, particularly my last 20 years, have felt like that. And in some ways I probably defined success as the ability to be at that rev limiter, shaking and not fall apart.
Yeah.
And I think there's absolutely seasons for that. I think there are times God calls us to that. There are sometimes things come into your life.
I was going to say, sometimes life just demands it.
And yet I think it's probably inaccurate to see that as like the only way to live.
That's right.
And everything else is failure or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of challenging some of those assumptions I was making, and kind of going, okay, I am where I am now. We've established some things. We've built some things. We've got some team. We're in a spot now. What do I do? What do I do from here? Right. There's a book, Marshall Goldsmith wrote a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
Yeah.
And he was writing it professionally. I read it a few years ago, but the idea sometimes like everything you did to get you to where you are is not what you need to go where you're supposed to go.
And our instincts are that, hey, this worked for me. I'm going to keep
if it ain't
running
broke,
this
don't
play.
fix it.
That's right.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right? Playbook. Yep.
And so sometimes that may be true. I don't feel like it's true for me. I feel like I need to really ask some deep questions and be patient and think deeply about, you know, what that looks like for me in the future. And I think it, again, I keep feeling the Lord drawing me towards peace and freedom, peace and freedom, helping people get there, peace and freedom. Right. And again, that's general, because there may be for some people there in seasons where you just got to bite down and lock on and, you know, refuse to quit and all that. But I feel like that's kind of what I'm feeling right now, and trying to really take some time to just allow the Lord to challenge my assumptions, allow God's word to challenge my assumptions. One of the things I think that's certainly changed for me is a sense of patience around learning. Like for my first 40 years, and particularly my last 20, felt this sense of urgency that I had to learn everything right now.
Yeah.
So it was like, I just felt exposed, like I don't know enough.
Yeah.
And so my reading list was forever long. And if I read 3 pages in a book and it wasn't awesome, I threw it away. And so I've got like 75 books, maybe more, that I've started, and I got 1 chapter in and then I tossed it. And part of the reason was because I was so frenetic in trying to just download all this information in my mind that I was so preoccupied by the next 10 books I was trying to read instead of reading something slow. And I did the same thing with the Bible. You know, I just don't know enough. I need to know more. And so because of that, I didn't take the joy in learning that I do now.
Yeah. And
I don't think I learned as deeply. I think my educational experiences in the last 20 years were more broad than they were deep.
That's a really, sorry, just to pause there for a second, because I think it would be easy to miss what you just said there, but it's so important. The difference between absorbing information and really learning deeply and like integrating it into your life. There are things that sit on the surface, and there are things that get ingrained into the depths of who you are. And what a lesson. I think if some people took nothing away from this podcast, aside from that, the value of that, because I think a lot of us get caught up in that kind of thing. I've watched you take that journey and the depths to which you mine things that you are learning now. And then the way that you're sharing those skills with others on how to do that. Like I cannot express enough admiration for it and respect for it, and the fact that you're passing that on to other people, unbelievable gift. I hope people don't miss that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. You know, I talked a few weeks ago in the asking, seeking, knocking message about, you know, the point of a question isn't necessarily an answer, although you'll get answers. But like, I think in my mind, I felt like there's a million questions and I need to have an answer for all of them. Right. I don't want someone asking me a question I don't have an answer for. And so I felt like there was this infinite number of questions that I needed to get answers. And so when I came up on a question, my point was just give me the right answer. Give me the answers now. Like, give me the answers to the test. Instead of the way I think about it now is, it's not as much obsessive about an answer. It's like, well, is there another answer? Are there more answers? And like,
are there more questions? Is this leading me to a better question?
I'll sit with the question a lot longer because I'm patient, because I don't feel the same sense of urgency that I have to get all the answers.
Yeah.
And that's different. That's changed like that. In fact, I haven't really told many people this, but especially my first 5 to 10 years of preaching, you know, I mean, I'm a young guy. I was 23 years old. And, you know, when I got my first job, and now I'm telling people what the Bible says. Yeah. And I'm like, my first 10 years, I was like constantly worried somebody was going to come up to me and ask me a question about the Bible I didn't know. And so part of, I look back and I wish I could throw an arm around that kid and encourage him, because I didn't even enjoy the study as much as I felt exposed. I felt insecure. And so I was like on this mad dash to get all the Bible answers so I could be the Bible answer man, because I didn't want to be embarrassed that I didn't know an answer. Someone caught me off guard.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I got a bunch of answers, and I did learn a lot. No question. Fear has a motivating factor. But what I had was a bunch of answers I could give. I don't know that I had really found the truth that I was looking for. And then what happens is you get a little further in life and the winds hit and the rain hits, and then you end up in some stuff that those answers don't work for you anymore. And again, a little bit of maturity in life, and you start all of a sudden, like, something shifts. And so
digging a lot deeper.
So it's much different. My time studying the Bible, reading, I don't feel like I got to hurry up and get to the next verse. I got to hurry up and get to the next thing. I want to sit here. I want to talk about it. I want to talk it to death. Maybe I want to talk about it and then go and then question what we just talked. Like, I just don't feel that same frenetic, and, pace to my learning. And I'm thankful, because now I'm enjoying it. I take great joy in it. And I think that a lot of what I'm teaching now is a lot more thought out. And it's coming from a deeper place, and it's coming from a healthier place, to be honest. So I feel like whatever my halftime adjustments are and all of that are going to come out of that. And I'm definitely not like taking my foot off the gas or procrastinating on those type of things. But I also I'm not in a huge rush. I feel like the Lord's going to kind of show me when I'm ready to see it. That's if I'll keep looking.
That's right.
And my job is not to necessarily find it, but to be ready when God wants to show it to me. And so, that's where I'm at right now.
I think that's great. You brought up a verse, and I can't remember the reference for it recently, but you were talking about, like, Jesus was telling them that they weren't quite ready for a truth yet. Do you remember what the reference was for that?
I'll pull it up here real quick.
But I think that really is true of us sometimes. Like, we aren't at a place in our maturity, or even in just, our ability to hold a truth sometimes, until we get a little further down a road, and then we have the capacity for it and the space for it. And I think that is kind of a cool thing that we're experiencing right now, is starting to be able to have space to hold some bigger truths and some deeper things, and some revelations and things that really grow you as a person.
So it's John 16:12. He says, "There's so much more I want to tell you, but you can't bear it now. When the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all truth. He will not speak on his own, but will tell you what he has heard. He will tell you about the future. He will bring me glory by telling you whatever he receives from me. All that belongs to the Father is mine. This is why I said the Spirit will come and tell you whatever he receives from me." So essentially Jesus understood there, like, sometimes we can only handle all the truth we can stand in the moment.
Right.
And you hit almost that saturation point. And so, but he says it's okay. Like, throughout your life, the Spirit will guide you into truth.
That's right.
And you'll be ready, again, 20 years ago, if I had somebody had thrown their arm around that kid and said, "Hey, take your time, dude. Don't worry." I probably wouldn't have been ready for it then. You got to kind of
take the journey.
Yeah. Growing up takes a lifetime.
That's right. What a way to end. I love that. Well, thanks, hon. Thanks for a great question. It was a really good lead in, and I hope that truly sparks questions for other people too, that they can think about their own journey and whatever point they're on. If you're in the first quarter or the last, what are the adjustments that you want to make? What are the things that you want to learn? What's been your journey?
Yeah. Maybe we'll come back to this one down the road, right? To be continued.
Yeah, I like that.
All right.
Open-ended. See ya.
See ya.